Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, September 24th, and boy, do we have a show for you. It is Tuesday, so of course, we're going to do, like we do every single week, our NFL Power Rankings and our college football top 25. But before we get to that, we're going to do our Monday Night Football review, a historic night for rookie quarterback Jayden Daniels, an MVP-like performance for one Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, not to mention the interesting performance of the Bengals all around, everything to do with them. We're going to break down Monday Night Football in just a second, but before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net, or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a rainy Tuesday, September 24th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into Monday Night Football, and what a wild night it was. Start off with Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels, the second overall pick out of LSU, the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, showed why he won the Heisman last year, why he was the best player in college football, and why maybe he should have been in consideration to be the number one overall pick. Jayden Daniels goes out there, casually throws just 2 incompletions. 91.3% completion percentage, a new rookie record. Now, a lot of that is due to the style that the Commanders were running. Obviously, a lot of short check down passes, but they took some shots last night. For the first time all season, the Washington Commanders took some shots. The entire country was introduced to Jayden Daniels on primetime football, and he showed out. Not only was he having an incredible game as far as on-the-field production goes, but he was dominating just everything you could possibly want him to dominate. He was able to control the play style, control the pace, which is what we wanted to see out of these Washington Commanders. He was able to be efficient and effective while also pushing the ball downfield. A beautiful couple of deep balls to Terry McLaurin, getting him involved in the offense for the first time. That duo with him on the ground, now rushing for the most first downs out of every single quarterback in the entire NFL. Also, Brian Robinson being that punch-it-in kind of threat. Austin Eckler goes out with a concussion, but he was a huge part of that offense. The Washington Commanders might be a little bit tough for these teams. If Jayden Daniels keeps playing like this, he is near unstoppable. The Washington Commanders and Jayden Daniels have not punted on 14 straight drives. They haven't punted since the third quarter of the first week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They did not punt all of week 2 against the New York Giants. They settled for 7 field goals. They weren't able to punch it into the end zone. This week, Monday Night Football, they traded some of those field goals for touchdowns. They went for it on fourth a whole bunch. They were just very, very effective, no matter what they wanted to do. And you could put a lot of that on the Bengals defense if you want. The Bengals defense is having some issues early in this season, and it's a little bit scary for a Bengals team that wants to win some games. They fall to 0-3. But Jayden Daniels, give that man his flowers. He is going to be a tough player to stop in the NFL, and he's only going to get better. The more he gets comfortable in this league, the more that Cliff Kingsbury and that offense is able to expand past those screen passes, past those quick slants, and we just saw a glimmer of it, just a glimpse of it against the Bengals on Monday Night Football. I cannot wait to see more Jayden Daniels. He is going to be a problem, and obviously is now the front runner for the offensive rookie of the year. But everyone in Washington should be excited. You finally get a face and a name to attach to that Commanders brand. They haven't had one since they switched from the Redskins and the Washington football team to the Commanders. This is going to do wonders for that team, not only on the field, but also off the field. And as someone that lives in the D.C. area, you can already feel the immediate effect. But Talking a little bit about the Bengals on the other side of this game, their offense was doing their thing. Joe Burrow throws for over 300 yards. Jamar Chase, 2 touchdowns on the day, burning this not very good, to be fair, Commanders secondary. They did what they needed to do. They were able to hold them to a couple field goals, that Commanders defense, and that was the difference. This was the first game since 1940 to not have a punt or a turnover in it. So great football played by both sides. It was just Jayden Daniels and the Commanders with their defense were able to win this game. Now, it isn't the greatest defensive performance, but I am very concerned for that Bengals defense going forward. That offense is going to be fine. The defense is a little concerning. Going over to the other game, that one was a little more of a dud. We saw Josh Allen, the current favorite for MVP, continue to do just MVP things. In the first half, I repeat, in the first half of the game, he put up 34 points. He had 4 passing touchdowns. He had 40 rushing yards and 230 passing yards. That is ridiculous. They didn't have to do anything in that second half. The Jaguars tried to mount a comeback, but that Bills defense, which has been the most important part of what has turned their season around, what has made them this team that's really tough to beat this year. We always knew Josh Allen was going to be able to do things with the offense, but with the state of the defense, the amount of pieces that they lost, they're able to make Trevor Lawrence look silly. They're able to make a Jaguars team look silly. Von Miller is having a resurgence. We talked a little bit about it yesterday when we were previewing the game, but Von Miller is back. He moved up a spot on the all-time sack leaders after getting a sack in his 3rd straight game to open the season. He's not playing most of the snaps. He's coming in on big snaps, big pass rush snaps, and he's winning at a 20% pass rush rate. That's the highest in the last 5 years of his career. He is having a resurgence, and it's really cool to see. As a leader on that Buffalo Bills defense, really the rest of that defense is rallying around just not having that guy, being underestimated. We saw Damar Hamlin get his first ever career interception on Monday Night Football. Of course, what happened a couple years ago against Cincinnati was also on a Monday night there. But this Monday, we saw an MVP type performance. We saw an offensive rookie of the year type performance, and we saw the way that these teams are going. The Bengals, we have a legit concern with their defense. They're injured up front. They can't really stop the run. They could not stop the Washington Commanders, and right now it doesn't seem anyone has the ability to really stop the Washington Commanders. I do want to see the Washington Commanders, be able to be a little better in the red zone. They had to settle for a couple of longer drives, but they do a really good job when they have the football. Brian Robinson has that power back there, just really moving bodies. That offensive line looked really good, and they were very clean as well. The Jaguars, we'll get to them in a little bit, but I mean, they just looked awful. They just really did. They couldn't move the ball offensively. Trevor Lawrence didn't look his best. His offensive line didn't give him any time. The receivers were dropping balls left and right. Christian Kirk drops a touchdown. They just weren't able to get anything going offensively, and that defense is a liability. It has been all season. It will continue to be. They just don't have the personnel, and they lost a couple of their guys too that you were counting on to be those starters in Jacksonville. It's not what you're looking forward to if you're a Jacksonville Jaguars fan. It's not what you're looking forward to if you're a Cincinnati Bengals fan, but they still have time to turn it around. The Bengals have a little bit of a easier schedule coming up. They get past the Chiefs. They get past, the Commanders, who surprisingly look really good. But then they get the Panthers, the Ravens, who haven't looked as good, and the Giants, their next 3. So they could find their way realistically back to 500 in the next couple weeks if everything goes right. But they do need to turn it around quickly. But let me know what you thought of these Monday night games. Jayden Daniels looked amazing. Jayden Daniels was obviously the story of the night. But like I said, let me know what you think. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to talk all about the NFL power rankings. Go through every single NFL team. Start from 32 to 17 in the next segment. Tuesday NFL power rankings are coming up next. You've been listening to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient. Hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement. The top is so vacant. I don't need shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing. Sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, cheating my way into be put down. Hitting your place all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live, but choose to dip. You choose to fight, to lose your grip and lose your gift. Oh. Please, Lord, give me a sign. Feel like I'm losing my mind.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, September 24th. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over Jayden Daniels' historic night with the Washington Commanders as they get their second straight win, improving to 2-1 on this young season, beating the Cincinnati Bengals on a great Monday Night Football game. In this segment, we're going to get into NFL power rankings. We're going to start with our first half of the rankings here, but before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, September 24th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the NFL power rankings here, starting at number 32. And as you can see on the screen here, number 32 is the Jacksonville Jaguars. We just kind of glossed over them a little bit on Monday Night Football, but the Jaguars have been, on almost all units of football, the worst in the NFL through the first couple weeks. The Panthers get their first win and look impressive offensively under Andy Dalton. The Jacksonville Jaguars have not been able to protect Trevor Lawrence, give him any time, even in that third quarter of the game last night, where he was able to move the ball a little bit. He was still taking hit after hit after hit. His receivers were still dropping the ball. Their defense cannot stop a fly right now, and it's not going to get much easier. They get one more game against a tough opponent, taking on the Texans next. Then they get a little bit of a lull in their schedule. So if there is a time for them to turn it around, it's going to start in week 5. But starting off at 0-3, potentially 0-4, is not a good look for a team that had very high hopes this season in the Jacksonville Jaguars. They fall 6 spots to number 32, a new team at number 32 for the first time this season. At number 31, the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans under Will Levis have just been weird, right? They have a very clear kind of identity with that defense, right? And they got a little bit injured there, but against the Packers and Malik Willis, they just got destroyed. Their defense wasn't really able to stop them, which has been different from the first couple of games where Will Levis was clearly the problem. Now, only being able to put up 14 points against a Packers defense that hasn't really been able to shut too many people down, but has been very good at turning the ball over is probably why they weren't able to get much, because Will Levis has not been very good at keeping the ball clean. The Tennessee Titans need to show some life, need to protect the ball offensively for them to win any games, and Will Levis has not really shown the ability to do that all season long. If he is able to keep the turnovers down, if Will Levis is able to protect the football just a little bit, whether that means going to more of a Jayden Daniels, Cliff Kingsbury style offense with lots of screen passes and quick passes where he doesn't have to hold the ball too long or take those shots downfield that often. Maybe that's what the Titans need to do, but they need to find a way to stop turning the ball over if they want to win games. Titans for now stick at number 31. At number 30, the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns looked like they were going to have a little bit of momentum to start this football game. A forced fumble off of the kickoff, leading to a touchdown on the first or second play of the game for them. After that, just about nothing. Deshaun Watson cannot move the ball. That offensive line gives up 8 sacks to a Giants defensive line that, while it is star-studded as far as names go, hasn't really been able to produce that kind of numbers all season long. We finally saw Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence combination be that deadly force that at least I thought it was going to be this season. The Cleveland Browns offense needs to switch to Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston is a guy that does turn the ball over, and I know I just finished talking about that with Will Levis. But that Browns defense, what they'll be able to do to protect Jameis Winston when he does inevitably turn the ball over a little bit, with his ability to stretch the field and be accurate with a guy like Amari Cooper. We saw something like that when Joe Flacco came in last season for the Cleveland Browns. Jameis Winston can do exactly what Flacco did, and he has a little bit more mobility. I think I think Jameis Winston would instantly cure a lot of the issues with this team, but the Browns don't seem to be interested in putting him in at all. Until then, the Cleveland Browns stick at 30. At 29, the New York Giants, or should I say Malik Nabers. Malik Nabers is something special. Malik Nabers is a top 10 wide receiver in this league, maybe even a top 5 receiver in this league. What he's been able to do on a game in and game out basis is ridiculous. He's setting near rookie records after a slow week 1. In the last 2 weeks, he's had 20 receptions for over 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. That kind of production is ridiculous, and he's doing that with Daniel Jones, who, for people who are confused, is not a very good quarterback. Daniel Jones is fine, but he's not very good, and Malik Nabers is making him look like a kind of serviceable quarterback, which is a very interesting dilemma here for New York. But as long as Malik Nabers keeps doing his thing, as long as that defensive line can continue to get pressure so the secondary doesn't have to do too much, this is a Giants team that could pull out a couple of wins against some solid teams. They get a big one against the Browns. They almost choke it away there at the end, but they get a big win against the Browns to improve to 1-2, rise a couple of spots to number 29. At 28, we have those Carolina Panthers. Andy Dalton comes in and immediately makes this team look like a team that's offense could work. Bryce Young might have been the problem. Now, I'm not going to overreact and too much to it because, first of all, they played the Raiders. The Raiders are not a very good football team. Their head coach, Antonio Pierce, was saying some of their players weren't even trying in the end. Business decisions were being made. They weren't trying to tackle guys. It wasn't the greatest defensive showing for the Raiders. It wasn't the greatest offensive showing for the Raiders. But Andy Dalton looked really good in that offense, and that's really exciting to see for the Panthers. The Panthers hadn't been able to break that 10-point mark in the first 2 games of the season. He goes for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think that's part of the quarterback cycle where you don't have a lot of tape on this guy in an offense. He's going to go off for a couple weeks before returning back to earth, but we'll see what happens. The Carolina Panthers rise up 4 spots from 32 to number 28. At 27, we have the Denver Broncos. Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos also get their first win. Bo Nix is the only of the starting rookie quarterbacks yet to throw for a touchdown after both Jayden Daniels and Caleb Williams threw for a pair in this week's games. But the Denver Broncos still, regardless, get a massive win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that was rolling high after starting 2-0 on the year. They go into Denver, and Denver just dismantles them. That defense couldn't really stop them, regardless of how much they were unable to run the ball. We finally saw Bo Nix push the ball downfield. Similar to Jayden Daniels, we saw him push the ball downfield a little bit, and that offense immediately looked like it had another gear. I want to see another week of that out of the Denver Broncos. I want to see Bo Nix take that next step before I really think this team has any kind of promise. For now, the Denver Broncos are going to settle for another 3-spot rise, going from 30 to 27 in this week's NFL Power Rankings. At 26, the New England Patriots. Patriots lose to the New York Jets in pretty convincing fashion. They go up against a very good defense. We get to see Drake May for the first time. Drake May leads a near touchdown drive, just runs out of time because they weren't trying to score. He didn't look awful, but still, this is Jacoby Brissett's team, most likely. We'll do a rookie report tomorrow when we break down some of these rookie performances in more depth. But the New England Patriots are a team that had played close by controlling the clock, being able to run the ball. This game, they fell behind. They weren't able to run the ball with Ramondre Stevenson, and this is why this is what we expected more out of the Patriots all season long. This is kind of where this is more of the Patriots are who we thought they were, rather than, oh my God, I remember that the Patriots suck kind of game. Patriots stick at number 26 on this week's power ranking. I'm not going to punish them too much. I think the Jets are a really good team, and they figured something out against the Patriots on Thursday Night Football this week. At 25, we have the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders, who, as I just mentioned, lost to the Carolina Panthers. The Raiders, who did not give perfect effort on their defense. The Raiders, who let Andy Dalton throw for the first 3-touchdown, 3-interception game of the season in a year where passing has been down, to a receiving core that has not been able to put up very many numbers. They gave up 100 rushing yards to Chuba Hubbard. That's not something that should be happening. That defensive front is supposed to be the strength of their team. That offense is going to go through its ups and downs because of the quarterback situation they have with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, both of whom got a shot in this game, who were just about the same kind of effectiveness, which is kind of what we expect. The Raiders are not a very good team. Their defense outside of Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins is a mess. That offense is going to continue to be very, very inconsistent, and there's just nothing you can really do about that. The Raiders should not have hopes for this season. They should not have expectations, but they're going to continue to have expectations because they beat up on the Ravens, who have had a lot of trouble closing out games. Raiders fall to 25. At 24, the Chicago Bears. And this is an unfortunate situation, and I don't want to punish them too hard because they literally cannot run the ball. Or I don't want to punish Caleb Williams too hard, I will say, because they don't run the ball. But this isn't a Caleb Williams ranking. This is a Bears ranking. The Bears against the worst run defense in all of football. A team that was giving up 230 yards a game. A team that is coming off of a game giving up 260 yards to the Green Bay Packers. Could not get any kind of push to run the ball. That offensive line is awful. It's horrible. Caleb Williams throws his first touchdown to Rome Odunze. He throws another one later. He throws the ball 52 times against a Colts team that, again, I stress, cannot run defend. They cannot run defend. That is awful play calling. That is awful game planning. That is not what you want to do. It's not like they were behind in this game. The Colts gave the Bears every opportunity to win this game. Anthony Richardson turned the ball over a whole bunch of times to the Bears, a couple of times in the red zone, stopping them from scoring, and yet the Bears refused to win this game. The Colts were like, Bears, do you want to win this game? And the Bears were like, you know what? No, it's fine. You can have this one. That's what this was. Both of these teams tried to lose the game, and the Bears just did a better job of that. I need to see better out of the Chicago Bears. I really do, because Caleb Williams throwing the ball 52 times is not the answer, especially against a bad run defense team. Chicago Bears are at 24. At 23, we have the Miami Dolphins, a team that cannot move the ball offensively. Only 3 points against the Seattle Seahawks. Skylar Thompson looks awful behind that offensive line that cannot protect anyone. I'm very excited, in theory, to see Snoop Huntley. I hope they get him some game snaps. We saw Tim Boyle play, though. We saw Tim Boyle come in and play real NFL football for the second season in a row, and that is a death sentence. If Tim Boyle is starting a football game for your team, if Tim Boyle is the quarterback for your football team for any kind of meaningful snaps, you're just not looking good. They have the weapons. They did not get them the ball quickly. They did a good job with Devon Achane. They got him the ball quickly in the flat, but you have Tyreek Hill, you have Jalen Waddle. You need to try and get them the ball on these quick screens, on these bubble screens, on these wide receiver screens, or quick slants, or something like that. Something that you can just get a quick concept and get the ball into your playmakers' hands so they can make something happen. Maybe you do an end around to these guys. You need to have something like that going on if you want the Miami Dolphins to succeed without Tua. Because while Tua is a better quarterback than they have, he's not a world beater at the quarterback position, right? If you have a Andy Dalton, he can run this offense just as good as Tua does, I think. Maybe I'm way off on that, but the Miami Dolphins, until I see they can do anything offensively, fall 10 spots to number 23. They're the biggest fallers of the week. At 22, the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers lose their first game of the season in a game that was same versus same. The Pittsburgh Steelers beat them 20-10. They lose a lot to injury, though. Joe Alt injured. We saw their quarterback, Justin Herbert, get hurt. They weren't able to run the ball as effectively against a good defense, and that's the issue. They run into a good defense, they're not going to be able to run effectively. They're not going to have that same kind of effectiveness they did against the Panthers and they did against the Raiders. They're not going to be able to have that. And because of that, it's just this Chargers team cannot be trusted to win a big game. If they fall behind at all, they don't have the offensive structure, especially with an injured Justin Herbert, to make any kind of comeback. Taylor Heineke, while he kind of has that quarterback of destiny vibes, when he was with Washington, he doesn't have that anymore, at least not what I saw with the Chargers against the Steelers there. He could not get anything going behind an injured offensive line. But we'll see. The Chargers do have some hope. They have an identity. They run the ball, and I respect them for it. They do what they know they will do best, but it's not good enough this year. Maybe next year they can make something work out of this once they get a couple more guys that can really help Jim Harbaugh's personnel and philosophy. But for now, they're here at 22. At 21, we have those Indianapolis Colts. And as much as I want to believe in this Indianapolis Colts team, as much as I want to believe in Anthony Richardson, as much as I think this run game is awesome with Jonathan Taylor, he continues to be one of the best backs in the league, Anthony Richardson cannot get a completion percentage anywhere higher than 50%. He keeps making bad throws. He keeps missing them, and I see the promise there. Everyone sees the potential, but he's just making too many mistakes, too many boneheaded turnovers right after a really good play, a couple of them in the red zone. You can't make those mistakes if you want to be a good football team. The Colts fall 3 spots to number 21. At number 20, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're a 3-0 team, and I know I have them pretty low here. But Justin Fields and that offense has yet to put up over 20 points. And they haven't really been doing it against elite defenses. They beat the Falcons, they beat the Broncos, they beat the Chargers. None of those defenses scream amazing defense to me. They haven't been able to break that 20-point barrier, though. And when they go up against a competent offense, when they go up against a really good defense, they're going to have some issues. And that's not going to happen for a little while. They have a pretty soft beginning of the schedule. They get the Colts, Cowboys, Raiders, a couple of those teams. The Colts could do things. The Cowboys could do things. The Raiders could do things. You know, those are 3 teams that, in theory, could be really good at offense, but they're not teams that are consistently good at offense. So it might be a bit till they see a team that can, come at their defense and beat them. For now, TJ Watt is winning football games. That defense is winning football games, and that's enough. That's Tomlin football for you. He refuses to say that Justin Fields is QB1, despite him winning 3 straight games and doing exactly what you need him to do. He's making improvements. You see the vision there. The Steelers are at number 20, though, and they'll continue to climb, just slowly. But I just don't think this team is really ready to take on a true contender yet. They'll still find a way to make the playoffs, I'm sure, but as far as power rankings go, they're not really exciting me. At number 19, we have those Washington Commanders. They make a massive jump, the Washington Commanders do, up 9 spots from last week, all the way into the top 20. Jayden Daniels, with his confidence, his swagger, his completion percentage, his deep balls to Terry McLaurin, they get everything they want to go against the Bengals. And I mean, it's just incredibly impressive to watch. The Commanders are a team that I need to see a little bit more out of before I raise them even higher. But this team has a lot of promise, a lot of potential. Again, we talked about it in the first segment. They haven't punted in 14 drives. They haven't punted in over 2 weeks. That is ridiculous. That is not a normal person stat. That's not a normal team stat. It's very impressive to see from these Washington Commanders, and I can't wait to see what they do next. At 18, we have the Dallas Cowboys. What a fall from grace. The Cowboys' defense has been exposed as one that also cannot stop the run. The Cowboys' defense has been exposed as a not great defense, and the Cowboys' offense, as we talked about, is very one horse. It's very much just CeeDee Lamb. If they fall behind, they don't have a run game. If they fall behind and you start to double cover CeeDee Lamb, they don't really have that go-to second option. Sure, Brandon Cooks can get open from time to time. Sure, they have a couple of other options there, but it's nothing that's screaming to you as this is the guy that we can rely on other than CeeDee Lamb to make a big play. And it's not good. The Cowboys are going to keep on getting torn apart against quality opponents because if they start to fall behind, they just don't have an answer for you. And at number 17, we have the Atlanta Falcons, a tough loss against the Kansas City Chiefs. One that you could argue maybe the refs won or lost for them, but they kind of lost it for themselves. They had an opportunity after that blown call to tie the game again. Their defense made a big stop. They had an opportunity to win. They weren't able to come through. A huge stop by that Chiefs defense on 4th and 1. Interesting play call on a pitch. Not something I would do, but it's the Falcons. They're going to do what they need to do. They're a solid team. They're just not, again, they're one of those mid-tier teams that we're sitting at in the NFL. They're not really exciting. They're not really putting anything out there that I'm like, oh my God, this Falcons team is going to be a problem for anyone. They're just going to be a pest. They could beat anyone and they could lose to anyone. And that's why they sit here at 17, right near the median of the league. But we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to take out the top half of the NFL Power Rankings. So stick around for that here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube. Absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube, absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, September 24th. If you are just tuning in, we've just gone over the first half of the NFL Power Rankings, numbers 32 to 17. We're going to finish them up in this segment, but before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, September 24th. But like I was saying, in this segment, we're going to finish up the NFL Power Rankings. Where we left off, we had the Atlanta Falcons at 17, which leads us to number 16, the Cincinnati Bengals. Our first 0-3 team, and you might think that's a little high for them, but you look at what their offense has been able to do, and I understand if you put them lower. I really do. But that offense, they finally get healthy. They put up over 30 points, and against a team that isn't as hot as the Commanders are right now, against a team that, you hope the defense can play better because they played better in past weeks. They've put up over 30 points in the last 2 weeks in a row, which is good enough to beat just about any team, but their defense has not been able to step up to the plate. We need to see more out of that defense, which is why they keep losing. But for now, they're here at 16 because I think they can beat the bad teams pretty handily now. We'll see, though. They could very easily fall a lot further, though. At number 15, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They were up in the top 10. They were a team that I was confused by because they kept winning games and they kept looking good. And we saw why that doubt, or at least my doubt, was there. They get absolutely destroyed by the Denver Broncos, a team that I do not think is very good at football. The Bucs probably needed that punch in the mouth. They probably needed that to wake back up and say, hey, maybe we aren't world beaters. Maybe we need to get back to the drawing board and do what works for us. Get back to that underdog mentality. Get the ball to Mike Evans. They need to give the ball to Mike Evans. That's something that they did in their win against the Commanders week 1. They were able to escape against a bad team in week 2 without giving him the ball. But week 3 against the Denver Broncos, they didn't give him the ball again, and we saw what happens. Their offense couldn't do anything. We need to see more out of that Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans combo if they want to continue to win football games. At number 14, the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams, I can't believe, found a way to come back from just about 20 points down in that second half with no wide receivers, their top 2 weapons gone, no offensive line, most of their offensive line gone. They were able to mount a comeback against an equally injured San Francisco 49ers team, but still, Matthew Stafford leads a masterclass without weapons. Matthew Stafford is still one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. You need to put some respect on his name. The Rams are a very good football team, and when they get healthy, if they're able to get healthy, they will be a problem in this league. They just need to survive this injured portion. And if they can continue to do that with the production of Kyren Williams, 3 touchdowns yesterday, one through the air, 2 on the ground, what he's able to do in the running game, adding that extra versatility as a receiver, they can win some games. They pull off a huge upset against the San Francisco 49ers this week. They're second in that division right now. Don't look now. Only the Seahawks are ahead of them. So maybe they can make some noise. At number 13, the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals lose to the Detroit Lions, a team that I am very high on. The Arizona Cardinals, I also really like. Their offense did take a step back. They weren't able to get the running game going, which is a little bit concerning because that's where they're kind of built on. Marvin Harrison had a solid game, which is what you like to see. The Arizona Cardinals had a pick 6 get called back on a controversial 2-minute warning call. I don't think it was a 2-minute warning, but it didn't end up affecting the outcome of the game. Lions won by 10. If you just assume everything else goes the same, they still end up losing that game, which I know you can't really do. But this is a good Cardinals team. We saw the defense kind of buckle down a little bit, only hold a good Lions team to just 20 points. The offense against a good Lions defense as well needs to show up a little more, but I still believe in that offensive unit. The Cardinals are here at 13. At 12, those Seattle Seahawks. 3-0 looks good on them. Geno Smith, the most accurate quarterback in the NFL, not by completion percentage, but as far as hitting your targets, whether or not they catch it. His connection with DK Metcalf has been unreal this season. They destroy that Miami Dolphins team 24-3. That defense is getting a lot of pressure, one of the highest pressure rates in the entire league. That's what you get when you bring in the Ravens defensive coordinator to be your new head coach. He's turning that defense around. Geno Smith is doing what he needs to do to win ball games. This is a good Seahawks team. Don't count them out. At number 11, it's those Baltimore Ravens. They get their first win of the season, but it's not a very convincing one. It was going to be a very convincing win. It was going to be. They were up 28-6 in the fourth quarter. Then they remember, we're the Ravens. We can't close games. They let the Cowboys come all the way back. Final score 28-25, and in a situation where they almost give the ball back to the Cowboys in the last couple of minutes. That is not how you want to end the game. They get out of Jerry World with a huge win. I want to give him credit for that. I really do. But that is not how you can win games against a real contender. If they give up that many points in the fourth quarter, if their defense stops playing the fourth quarter, if their offense can't figure out how to play offense in the fourth quarter, they're going to continue to lose games. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. These Baltimore Ravens need to feed it to Derrick Henry. They did a very good job of that in this game. Over 150 yards in the first 3 quarters. Or not in the first 3 quarters, but total. They were feeding it to him a lot in the beginning of the game. They were running it up against this Cowboys defense. They were looking very good. They kept doing it in the fourth, but it wasn't the same. They need to just continue to do what works, and they need to be able to figure out how to close games. Hitting into the top 10, we have Malik Willis and the Green Bay Packers. Can you believe it? Malik Willis is 2-0 as a starting quarterback in 2024. I never thought he would get another shot, but Jordan Love, who is trying his best to beat this injury faster than anyone else in history, was questionable for this game. Ridiculous to me. But the Green Bay Packers go out, put 30 points up against a good Titans defense. They do their job. Malik Willis is running that offense very, very proficiently, getting the ball out to the receivers, doing what he needs to do, and most importantly, not turning the ball over. That's all you can ask out of a backup quarterback, out of a stopgap quarterback. Malik Willis, with his ability to run the ball, adds another layer to that offense. It's very impressive to see. When they get Jordan Love back, this is going to be a very dangerous Packers team, and Malik Willis is doing a great job in the meanwhile. At number 9, the New York Jets. They climb a couple spots up to number 9, up 6 spots. Aaron Rodgers looks like he's back, and that's why they're back up in the top 10. That defense suffered a little bit of injuries. It's not very good, but they're still a very good unit, you know? When you have Aaron Rodgers doing what he's doing on offense, the defense doesn't need to be as elite as it was last year. It'd be great if it was, but that defense was able to get pressure, albeit against a bad Patriots offensive line, but they were still able to get pressure, and that's a very encouraging sign. You want to see more of that as this season continues. The Jets are up to number 9. At number 8, the New Orleans Saints. They come in, score 92 points in the first couple weeks of the season. Wonderful job by the Saints. Then they take on the Eagles. They cannot run the ball. Alvin Kamara goes back to what he was last season. Derek Carr goes back to what he was last season. Rashid Shaheed drops a couple of touchdowns. They weren't exactly wide open, but he had hands on him. He probably should have caught at least one of those. This is a Saints team that defense really did step up. It sucks that you give up 150 yards to the tight end, but they did a good job. They turned the ball over. They turned the Eagles over a couple of times when they were driving. They weren't able to stop Saquon, and they weren't able to get the run going on their own end, which is what caused them to lose this game in a tight one. But the Saints are still a very good team. The Eagles are just a little better. And speaking of the Eagles, we have the Eagles here at number 7. Saquon Barkley has been the difference maker. In the 2 games that the Eagles win, Saquon Barkley has been the big X factor. When Saquon Barkley gets going, when he breaks off those big runs, the Eagles are a completely different team. The Eagles are a different beast when Saquon Barkley is there, and it's crazy to see the night and day difference. Saquon Barkley and the Eagles are at number 7. That defense looked really good against the Saints. I just talked about it with how the Saints defense looked good. The Eagles defense looked really good. They'll get a couple of their weapons back. Hopefully A.J. Brown is back by this week. Hopefully Devonta Smith is okay after taking a nasty looking hit, late hit. Got concussed. Maybe he'll be back for this week, but you have other options. You still have Saquon. You still have Dallas Goedert. You traded for Jahan Dotson, who I don't think is very good, but you trade for him. You give up a 3rd-round pick. You want to draw up plays for that guy. They weren't doing it. Jalen Hurts is a weapon in and of himself. But this is still a very good Eagles team. They're up at number 7. At number 6, it's the San Francisco 49ers. Juwan Jennings, how about him? You go out and you extend him this season. Under the radar move. I love Juwan Jennings after what he did in the Super Bowl. You go and pay Brandon Ayuk all that money, and he has not been able to do anything. Juwan Jennings, on the other hand, steps up in the absence of George Kittle, steps up in the absence of Deebo Samuel. 3 touchdowns, over 10 catches, over 150 yards. He went off. What a huge day from Juwan Jennings. Brock Purdy is a little injured. We'll have to keep monitoring that. The Niners blow a big lead. It's not very Niners-like. A lot of teams haven't been themselves this season. The Niners are one of them, but Juwan Jennings is a bright spot, and this is still a very good San Francisco 49ers team. They're here at number 6. At number 5, the Houston Texans. They drop a game to a very good Vikings team. A very good Vikings defense. The Houston Texans only were able to put up 7. I thought their offense was a lot better than this, but going up against a Brian Flores defense, one that's been very, very tough to beat for any team all season long. The Niners had trouble with it. The Texans have had trouble with it. Those are two huge tests against that Vikings defense, but they were still able to get some production. Stephon Diggs had his first huge game as a Texan. They didn't have Joe Mixon, and they weren't able to run the ball, which has kind of been their main offensive engine in the first 2 weeks. As much as CJ Stroud gets all the love, and that wide receiver core and Nico Collins get a lot of love, Joe Mixon has gone over 100 yards in each of their first 2 wins, and that is a crucial part of their game plan. They weren't able to get him. They weren't able to get Cam Akers going, so they're down here at number 5. At number 4 are those Minnesota Vikings. 2 straight huge wins. They knock off back-to-back number 2 power-ranked teams in my power rankings in the 49ers and in the Texans. What can't Brian Flores and that defense do? Sam Darnold goes for 4 touchdowns, doesn't turn the ball over. Kevin O'Connell is 20-0 when he ties or wins the turnover battle, and that Vikings team is not turning the ball over right now. Justin Jefferson is awesome. Sam Darnold's connection with him, I mean, it's Justin Jefferson, so, he's going to do his thing. Aaron Jones continues to run the ball effectively. Everything is going great for the Vikings right now. They're up all the way to number 4, the biggest rise of the week, going up 12 spots. At number 3, the Detroit Lions. They get a tough win against the Arizona Cardinals, a good Cardinals team in my opinion. They're up 1 spot here. The Lions have a good defense. They lose Marcus Davenport, which hurts, but Jared Goff plays efficient football. We get both running backs involved. Amon-Ra gets a touchdown as well. They pull out a fancy hook and ladder play. That defense plays really good. This is a good Detroit Lions team. They just need to get that offensive engine going a little bit more. We'll see what happens, though. They're up at number 3. At number 2, Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. Dismantling the Jacksonville Jaguars. Not even a shot. They are 3-0 now. Josh Allen looks like the clear MVP favorite. Everything is going right for them. Everything is clicking offensively. Defensively, everything is working. All of the guys that they brought in to replace the big names that they cut are working. This is a masterclass as far as GMing from Brandon Beane over there. I mean, it's a great team. This Buffalo Bills, it's hard to find flaws with them right now. James Cook is doing his thing, rushing and receiving. Josh Allen is giving the ball to anyone with hands right now, and there's no sign of stopping them. This is a very good Bills team, and I'm most impressed by that defense. If they can keep this up, it's going to be very tough for anyone to beat them. And that means at number 1, the Kansas City Chiefs. You can't beat them, you can't drop them, right? They've won 2 straight Super Bowls. They've won 3 straight games. 3 straight tight games, I will say. 3 straight games with a little bit of questionable refereeing, but this is still a very good Kansas City Chiefs team. They find a way to pull out the victory. They always do. This is a great Kansas City Chiefs team, and as long as they keep winning, I can't move them down, regardless of how good the Bills look behind them, regardless of how good the Vikings, the Lions, the Texans look behind them. I don't think the Chiefs will lose to any of them right now. But let me know what your thoughts are on my NFL power rankings real quick. The top 10 for you. At number 10, we had the Packers, 9 the Jets, 8 the Saints, 7 the Eagles, 6 the Niners, 5 the Texans, 4 Vikings, 3 Lions, 2 Bills, and number 1, the Kansas City Chiefs. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to go through the NCAA top 25 and the group of 5 top 5 teams. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, September 24th. If you are just tuning in, we've just gone over the NFL Power Rankings, all 32 teams. In this segment, we are going to finish off our show talking all about the NCAA, going through our top 25 as well as the top 5 teams in the group of 5. But before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, September 24th. But like I was saying, we are going to finish off our show today talking all about the NCAA Top 25. But before we do that, it's the G5T5, the group of 5 top 5 teams, and it is much different than it was last week. A couple of teams drop out of it because of huge losses. Northern Illinois, a loss to Buffalo. Memphis, a loss to Navy. 2 teams that were on this list before get a massive loss. It is just a little bit unfortunate for these programs that one loss basically takes them out of contention. But as we see at number 5, Oregon State, the Pac-12 well represented here. I almost put Navy in there after their win over Memphis, but Oregon State only has one loss, and it's to a very good Oregon team. If they can run the table, they have a real shot of making the playoff, because they do play Washington State later on. That's going to be a huge game to watch. At number 4, my James Madison University Dukes, after a huge win, 70-50 over Mac Brown and UNC. Team of the week, player of the week, Alonzo Barnett. So the kind of attention you want down there in Harrisonburg, Virginia. They just continue to go on their run. New coach, new team, no problem. James Madison is a very good football team. They're here at number 4. At number 3, University of Las Vegas, UNLV. They were on a bye, or they just continue to win games. They were on a bye this week. There's no reason to move them down. Washington State, though, gets a huge win over San Jose State in overtime. An underrated team in San Jose State there. They're up to number 2 in the group of 5. And number 1, Boise State. Tough game against Oregon. I mean, they just continue to play great football, right? Boise State, number 1, until someone can knock them off. There's a huge game, Washington State at Boise State, coming up, I believe, this week. We'll talk about that on Friday, but that is going to be a huge game for playoff implications. So keep an eye on that. That's the group of 5, top 5. But like I was saying, we're also taking care of our NCAA top 25. So without further ado, start at number 25. At number 25, I have Indiana. And some people might freak out a little bit here. Curt Cignetti and Indiana. I know Indiana has not historically been a very good football team, but 4-0, scoring a lot of points. They've won 52-14 this week. They just continue to beat teams. Some honorable mentions that Indiana beat out for that number 25 spot include James Madison University, Boston College, UNLV, Nebraska, Kansas State, and Rutgers. A little bit of a spoiler for you for some of those teams. Maybe you expected at least one of those to be in the top 25, but Indiana gets that number 25 spot over those 6 teams. I really like what Curt Cignetti has done with that program. I'm a big fan of the Indiana Hoosiers this year. At number 24, we have Washington State. Wazoo, like I said, couple of big wins. They're climbing that ladder. They have an inside track to the college football playoff. If they beat Boise State and they win out, they control their own destiny. If they win out, they are the most likely team to get that group of 5 spot. Washington State, there's no reason to believe that they won't. They just got a couple of tests that they need to get over. Pac-12 is coming back. We'll talk about that tomorrow as well. Lots of interesting stuff coming out of the Pac-12. At 23 is Boise State. Like I said, a big matchup between them and Wazoo. Boise State up 1 spot here from 24 after a couple of ranked team losses. Couple of teams fall out of the top 25. Boise State, another really good group of 5 team. They just continue to play good football. They're up 1 spot to 23. At 22, BYU, a huge win over Kansas State. Kansas State looked like it didn't deserve to be on the same field as BYU a lot of the time in this game. BYU, a very, very solid team. They're all the way up into 22 on my in the NCAA top 25 for this week. At 21 is Illinois, a huge win in overtime over Nebraska and Dylan Raiola. That defense is for real. That offense looks like it's for real as well. If they can continue to get that kind of quarterback play, they're going to be a tough out for a lot of Big Ten opponents with that defense, the way that they're playing. They've beaten a couple of top 25 opponents now. Let's see if they can keep it up. At 22, Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State, they take a big loss to Utah this week. 22-19. Alan Bowman's hasn't been super effective. Neither has Ollie Gordon, but that is a really good Utah team. As much as I wanted to punish them a whole bunch, I couldn't take them out yet because that is a very good Utah team they just lost to. They just got out-physicaled, simply. That Utah defense was too much for Oklahoma State to handle, but Oklahoma State is still a very good team. They'll have their chance to come back. They need a couple of things to fall in their favor if they want to get that auto bid, that one of those top 4 seeds, but they still have a chance at it. At 19 is their school from across the way, Oklahoma. They get a warm welcome into the SEC. A loss to Tennessee. Tennessee also a very, very good team. I think there's a clear top 7, and Tennessee is amongst them. You could put them in just about any order you want, but I think there's a clear top 7 with Tennessee in there. That is one of those really good teams that Oklahoma just ran into a buzzsaw here. I didn't want to punish them too severely. They're down 4 spots to number 19. At number 18, we have the Iowa State Cyclones. They just continue to win football games. They take down their rival Iowa a couple weeks ago. They do a very good job every single week. Their defense is one of the best in the nation, and that offense is doing enough. It's not the most explosive offense, but they have a lot of returning production, and as long as that production continues to work, they're going to keep climbing in the rankings. Iowa State up to number 18. At 17, we have the LSU Tigers. They stay where they were from last week in my rankings. LSU, I'm a little bit worried about, but still, this is an LSU team that I couldn't really put higher because of head-to-head matchups. Right ahead of them is the USC Trojans, who LSU lost to earlier on in the season. I still think USC is better than LSU, so I couldn't really put them any higher. USC, though, falls 6 spots after a loss to Michigan in the Big House. Not the way I thought that game was going to go. Michigan found their identity. Run the ball down your throats. They have big boys in the middle, and they will run it if you let them. USC did not have an answer for them. They kept it close, but it was not enough in this game. And speaking of Michigan, like I said, they found their identity. They're here at number 15 over USC, up 3 spots from last week. Maybe you can say they should go higher. I'm still not convinced. They looked awful in the first couple of weeks this season. That was a must-win for them. That was a huge win for them. If they can keep running the ball down people's throats, they've got a chance to make some noise this year. But I'm not convinced yet. For now, they sit at 15. At 14, it's Louisville. Louisville is just doing everything right. That offense is scary. They were able to survive against Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, a team that kind of was their Achilles heel with a running quarterback, but they were able to get a couple of really big, huge defensive stops in that game, end up winning by a good, solid margin. Louisville is a dangerous team in the ACC. I think they're that second best team there. There's a matchup between them and Miami coming up soon. That's going to be a huge game in the ACC. At number 13 is Notre Dame. They seemingly have found their offense again. Whatever the Northern Illinois coach told them wasn't working, it completely fixed them. I don't know what he told them, but that offense works now. They've put up a lot of points in back-to-back weeks, and Notre Dame's defense is still going to be very good. They're all the way back up into number 20 to number 19 after I didn't have them ranked 2 weeks ago. They're up 6 spots from number 19 last week. At number 12, and maybe you'll look at me with a shocked look, the Clemson Tigers. Their offense, after a tough week 1 against Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs, has been near unstoppable. 66 points against App State, 60 points against NC State. What are you going to do to stop them? I know they went up against not great defense, but back-to-back weeks putting up 60 points on your opponent is enough to make any team shake in their boots a little bit. That offense can continue to play the way that it is. This Clemson team could make a lot of noise in that ACC as well. Again, there's a couple of really good ACC teams out there. 11 goes to Penn State. Again, they just keep winning the games they need to. They look like a really solid team. Drew Aller is the thing that, again, I'm most surprised by, but he's doing what he needs to do to win games. A scare against Bowling Green a couple weeks ago knocked him a little far out of the top 12, but they're back in it as a couple of teams has fallen. And as long as they keep winning games, nothing really matters in this Penn State season, as usual, until they take on Ohio State and Michigan. If they can get over those two humps, those two nightmares in the back of their head, who knows how far they could go this year. At number 10, Missouri. A couple of close calls back-to-back. Overtime win against Vanderbilt. I still believe in this Missouri team, but it's a little scary. They're going to fall a couple of spots. I could have even moved them down a little bit more, to be honest with you, but Missouri is a very, very good football team. Brady Cook, I really like at quarterback. They're still in the top 10, but they're right on the fringe of it. Like I said, I think there's a clear top 7, and outside of that, it's kind of a jumble. At number 9, Utah. They get a huge win without Cam Rising, something that I personally did not think they could do. I didn't think they could win a big game without Cam Rising, but they do it. It's not something that you want to do. Cam Rising is going to be an enigma all season long. If he can play, they can be good. If he doesn't play, everything's up in the air. That defense is going to be great. They have a very physical football team, but you need Cam Rising. You need that offense as you start to play against really good opponents. I think they got past most of their tough opponents in the Big 12. They basically control their own destiny to the playoffs right now, but you don't want to get overconfident because there's plenty of trap games along the way, and you don't want to get trapped in them. Utah's at number 9. At number 8 is the Oregon Ducks. They were on a bye week, but they seem to have found something against Oregon State, something that I was waiting to see all season long from them. They're up one spot after a couple of teams fall backwards. We'll see if they can keep up the momentum from last week in their matchup this week. At 7, and this is where, like I said, this is where I think there's a clear break. 7 and up, I think you can put it in just about any order. They're the top 7 teams in the nation by far. The Tennessee Volunteers are at number 7, a huge win over Oklahoma. Welcome to the SEC moment for Oklahoma. Tennessee is killing it right now. They are a really, really good football team. There's not too many weaknesses there. That defense is solid. The offense was a little bit scary. It took a step back, wasn't as dominant as I thought it would be against Oklahoma, but that was their best opponent of the season so far. So it's fine if they weren't quite ready for that. They still win pretty convincingly. Tennessee is at number 7. At number 6 is Miami, and I toyed with them going even higher, but I mean, the rest of these teams here are all really good. Miami and Cam Ward. Cam Ward, I am falling in love with every time I watch him play. The way that he is poised and confident in the pocket, even against heavy pressure, the way that he leads that Miami team, that offense looks like it's never going to fail whenever he's out there on the field. This is a really good Hurricanes team, and that defense, don't discount them either. They shut down a really good USF team that gave Alabama some fits. I really like this Hurricanes team this year, but I'm trying not to get too high on them. At number 5 is that Crimson Tide team. They have a huge matchup this week against Georgia. That is going to be, I'm not sure what that's going to do this week or how that one's going to go, but we'll talk about that one later in the week. The Crimson Tide, again, just continue to win football games. They have a huge one this week. This is going to determine a lot as far as national rankings, SEC predictions. It's a huge game against Georgia this week. They're up to number 5. At 4, another SEC team, the Ole Miss Rebels. That offense, real. That defense is doing its job. Jackson Dart, could he be a Heisman candidate? I'm not sure if he's going to win the Heisman, but that offense looks really, really good for Ole Miss. They're still here at number 4. At number 3 is Ohio State. Will Howard is doing what he needs to do. That defense, it's not elite, but it's flying around, getting the stops it needs to get. Very impressed by this Ohio State Buckeyes team. Waiting for them to play a real opponent, though. At number 2 is Georgia. I talked about their matchup this week against Alabama. That is the big storyline in college football outside of the realignment stuff happening with the Pac-12 and the Mountain West. But Georgia, scary looking team. Survive a scare against Kentucky a couple of weeks ago. Still look really good. Dominant defense. That offense needs to get going a little bit, though. And at number 1, the Texas Longhorns. Arch Manning gets his first career start against a not very good team. Goes 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Solid start for the young Manning over there. Quinn Ewers will be back. That Texas Longhorn team, it looks like it has 0 weaknesses. There's not a single thing I can point at and be like, that's where you attack this Longhorns team. That's where you shut down this Longhorn team. This Longhorn team is going to be a problem. It's going to be a huge problem in the SEC and around the world of college football for the rest of the season. But let me know what you thought of my top 10, of my top 25. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Again, I think there's a clear line at 7 where we hit that elite kind of those 7 elite teams at the top, and then there's everyone else. But let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to today's episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I have been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Tune back in tomorrow. We're going to talk about potentially the White Sox breaking the all-time record. They have a game tonight. They have 120 losses. They lose 1 more. They break the modern era record for losses set by the 1962 New York Mets. That's a big game to watch. Of course, we're going to talk about our NFL rookie reports tomorrow. We're going to do some waiver wire stuff for fantasy and much more. But thank you, everybody, so much for listening to today's episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. We'll be back here same time, same place tomorrow to talk about all of the biggest news in sports. I'll see you then. You'll have a good one. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up, like my pedal feel like it's gonna be a bad day.